All right, welcome back. It has been quite some time since the end of season 3, but we are back. And we are back under a new name. We are back under a new branding, if you want to say. But starting off, of course, I'm Jack, joined by
Dominic Castillo.
And Giovanni.
All right, so we are back.
Dude.
It's the start of a new season, as always, bro. But of course, the main thing you see that is different is the name. We finally decided to change our name after 3 years. Because technically, if I remember correctly, Dom and I have been trying to change this name since like season 1.
It is pretty clever. I was really...
Yeah.
Well, for a bit, we were really pushing to keep that name. Because it really did make sense for us.
Yeah. So we finally changed the name after 3 seasons. And the sort of thought process behind trying to come up with a new name, we were trying to think of just stuff, but it's always very difficult to think of a new name. But the best ideas are always some of the ones that you just like blurt out, you know, without even much thinking. So the original thing I proposed to Dom and Gio was essentially like, let's like think of an acronym and try and make each of the letters mean something. And that sparked Dom and I for like 15 minutes just saying random acronyms and random things they could mean. And from that came CIA, call it anything. Now, I originally blurted it out because I was like, it would be funny to like have the initials be the same thing as, you know, the freaking actual CIA. But then, like, I don't know, something clicked about it between, especially like Dom and I. Like, Dom instantly was like, I kind of like that idea, you know, call it anything. And it kind of somewhat has a similar meaning in the sense of like, I don't know, it has like multiple meanings in a sense. Call it anything could be the fact that like we were just struggling to come up with a name for the podcast, so screw it, just call it anything, you know. But also it's like, but also it's like, you know, we cover such a vast majority of things, you know, it kind of makes sense that like, what's the way I want to put it? I don't really know what's the way I want to put it, but like, you know, we cover such a wide variety. That's why it was kind of tough coming up with a name for the podcast, you know?
Dude!
But going forward, we're hoping to be a bit more consistent with it, but also changing up a lot of things.
Yeah. As we've mentioned in the last season, the next couple of months are going to be very different, you could say. Dominic's moving to... Where are you moving to? Berkeley?
Berkeley, yes.
Yeah, he's moving to Berkeley to do hopefully his last year of college or university. Jack and I, we're not necessarily moving, but we're starting school, and we're actually going to take it seriously this time. Hopefully everything goes well. So there's going to be a very, I guess, different dynamic to the podcast because of how would you say, like, rare it'll be for all three of us to be available at the same time.
Yeah, so, I think so.
Yeah, we're introducing a new kind of format to the podcast where, let's say, because usually before, if one of us was not available, we would postpone the podcast to a different day or to like the next week. But now seeing how that will be more often than usual, we're going to be doing, if 2 members are available and the third member is okay with not being present for the episode, the 2 members are going to go forward with the episode and just do it themselves. But if the third member actually wants to participate in the discussion, let's say is like we watch, like, for example, Oppenheimer is coming out and we're planning on doing an episode on it, but for some reason one of us isn't available, but they want to be there, then we'll move on to a different topic and save Oppenheimer for the next episode when everyone is available.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest changes we're making to the podcast.
Yeah. Along with that, to sort of, how would you say, fix our sort of commitment issue, along with that, we're also adding a sort of substitution method where, similar to what we were saying with that, but also sort of the opposite, where let's say Gio proposes a topic, but Dominic doesn't really want to talk about it. He is more than welcome to sub out for that episode, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's an episode where Gio doesn't want to talk about a proposed topic, he's more than welcome to sub out. And, you know, that's sort of the thing we're going with, where, you know, we're trying to help all three of us out given the changes in scheduling, you know, where, like, now it's like all three of us, like, we don't know what our classes are going to look like just yet, so it's like, we don't know what times we're going to be available. Dominic especially doesn't know how much he'll be available, given he might be moving into like a dorm system where he has roommates, and who knows if that's going to be podcast friendly environment for him, you know? Yeah, so we're introducing this sort of method to sort of just be more accommodating for the three of us, and also just so that, you know, we aren't forcing each other to like talk about something that like the other members don't necessarily want to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
And then like how Gio was saying, I think also it also helps out in the cases of like I don't know, like album reviews, like when a new album drops, if someone hasn't like listened to it yet, it's like, it's kind of like how Gio was saying, you know, it's like either we can continue on, or if the person doesn't like, or if the person is like fine with us continuing on with that episode, then we can do it, you know? And it just helps us rather than having us kind of sit there and wait, you know? Or like how Gio was saying, like we let a week pass by to do the episode, and then when we get to do the episode, we're kind of like, it feels like the moment has passed by, you know?
Yeah. It'll help us stay more consistent with our weekly uploads. Talking about weekly uploads, lately we've been doing, our last season towards the end of it, we did one episode every week, but now we're leaving the door open to do a second episode, maybe even a third episode in a week, depending on how content is and how available we are. Because I know sometimes we do one episode, but then something comes up and we're like, oh, we have to wait for next week to talk about it, but then as Jack just said, the moment has passed. And it's like, oh, we could have just moved on to something else.
Yeah, definitely. And then, we're not going to commit to anything, but Gio and I have talked about the prospect of continuing the sort of like K-pop reviews, but in a, like, as a part of just the main podcast rather than its own thing, just so that, you know, kind of similar to what we've been saying. It's to help us keep us consistent, but also not feel like we're forced to like keep up with it, you know?
Yeah.
And then we're definitely going to get back to, how would you put it, a more consistent basis in terms of how we decide the topics, because Gio mentioned it in like one of the in the last episode of season 3, how like towards the end we just kind of got to a point where we were calling out topics like the day of, you know. So we're gonna try and get back to a point where we're more organized with it, and we're even gonna try and come up with a sort of method to help us like sort of randomize it in a sense, like so that each member sort of has a fair chance to propose an idea for us to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that,
was there something else?
That's what I'm trying to remember, but I'm pretty sure that was like the main basis, or the main thing we just wanted to sort of be let known going forward, is that, you know, you may not see all three of us together on an episode at all, like every episode, you know. Sometimes it might just be Gio and I, sometimes it might just be Dom and I. Sometimes I might not be there depending on time. But yeah, and then I guess sort of the main sort of I don't know how much it's gonna be the like main focus, but Gio, you mentioned about like talking about it's sort of like how the change is also symbolic of the three of us. You were saying, you remember?
Oh yeah. So when we were choosing the name, I kind of shared my opinion that we should try to do something, pick something that has to do with like a new beginning or a new chapter to kind of go along with our lives, because all three of us are moving on to something new. Dom's moving to a completely new city. Jack and I are, finally getting our stuff together and focusing on school. And other stuff like personal stuff also happening with my. I don't think I mentioned this in the last episode, but the property that I live on, or that my family lives on, was sold, and the new owner wants everyone to move out because he wants to tear it down and gentrification and all that. Dude, it's happening to everyone in this neighborhood, bro. I thought it was just us, but the two houses next to us are also like being told to get out. And one of them's like an apartment building, and like some dude that had like 8 months there got $40K to move out.
That's
like,
crazy,
bro. But and the dude that wants us to move out is offering $15K, and I was like, no. Add more M's to that.
Okay.
Or T's, I guess.
Add more zeros to the end of that right now.
Yeah, add more zeros, bro. I told my dad to ask for the same, because there's no way like some dude living in a 5x5 box is getting $40K and we're only getting $15K to move out. It's so dumb. But anyways, yeah, we're gonna eventually move to a different city, probably outside of Los Angeles, like over there in Lancaster, where people go to die, I guess.
Damn.
It's so grim out there, bro. It's so depressing. You have like, the houses are really nice because they're all new, but there's literally nothing out there, bro. You have like one convenience store and that's it. But yeah, that's happening for me, and then other stuff too. So it's like a new chapter in our lives, and the podcast, since it's like, I would say, would you guys say it's been like a big part of our lives? We've been doing it for like 3 years. You guys have been doing it for like 3 years, maybe even more. So it's a big part of us. So like we're taking it alongside with us, and I know it's kind of like it's a pretty, would you say wholesome
yeah.
idea?
Yeah, and while the name, you could probably find some way that the name reflects that sort of ideology, but like, I think the main sort of thing that reflects that is the overall change,
Mm-hmm.
Like changing the podcast to move forward with us, and it's definitely what's the way I want to put it? I don't know. It feels weird to say like it's a big moment in our lives, but to me, it feels like it's like a big moment and a big change going forward. Because it's like, think about it, like at this point in time, I've basically spent like a year and a half out of school, and I'm going back to it. Gio, you're going back to school for the first time in like 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Dom, the biggest thing with Dom is that, like we said, not only is it just the fact that he's moving to like a new city, but like he's going to the school he's been going to for 3 years, but now he's going there in person for the first time,
Yeah,
like
and it's his final year too.
Yeah, and it's for his final year. That's the craziest part.
Yeah.
Like the one time he finally steps foot on campus is going to be for his like potentially final year. The culmination of all the work that he's been putting in these past 3 years.
It would have been kind of crazy if you went all 4 years without stepping foot on campus.
That would have low-key been crazy.
We have Lango.
How would it...
Yeah.
Dom, how would you have felt personally if, like, you just never stepped foot on Berkeley?
Honestly, I would feel a bit distraught at the idea that I could have potentially gone the entire way without stepping a single foot. I feel like that would be, like, a good, like, clickbait YouTube title.
Oh,
But it would be an unfortunate reality that I feel like some people already went through. You know, like, for example, like international students. You know,
true.
those guys are probably never going to be able to step into foot, you know, ever since the pandemic, you know, beginning off that. But I guess to throw in my own 2 cents on how I would feel, aside from just being distraught, it would honestly suck. You know, my parents, since the beginning, my parents always wished they would see, you know, their son finally step onto campus, but they understand that, you know, the circumstances at the time with, you know, COVID and, you know, there's no point in because at the time you would have to pay full price for single rooms because those were the only rooms they were offering at the time because they didn't want any, you know, doubles or triples or quadruples, you know, in the same room while, you know, infections were rising and all that stuff. So that was understandable. However, they were rising costs because people were forced to go into singles, you know, like single like private, you know, dorms with no roommates. And so at the time, so I was like, okay, let's not do this. Let's instead just stay home. You know, I'm already comfortable at home. I'll just do everything online. The second year, same thing. Third year, same thing. Now, fourth year, since the majority of my classrooms are now being pushed into in-person, the majority of my classrooms are, how would you say, now advocating. You know, I'm not sure why they're not taking into, you know, the idea that international students can just willy-nilly just come over, you know, whenever they want. When, you know, sometimes they themselves have their own problems to deal with. Now they're pushing for in-person classes. No one can do anything about it. Professors are basically saying, if you can't make it, pick another class, drop out, do something else if you can't make it. And, you know, that's the harsh reality of things. You know, I get. You know, it's been 3 years, so we can't really do much. Aside from that, the move itself will be, I guess, a bit of a culture shock. You know, I've been pretty much living in here. I guess by K-Town. I'm not sure what this area where I live is really called. It's mostly, I guess, you know, Hispanic oriented. And you know, all the way over there, Berkeley is more. How would I say it? How do I say that without saying?
It's more. It's not. I don't really know what's the way you would word it. Honestly, I know YouTube. Okay. I know YouTube has some guidelines, but with us saying this, you basically know what we're saying, like what the majority of Berkeley is.
Yeah.
What are we saying?
Dom's talking about how he's going from living in a heavily Hispanic community to Berkeley, which isn't heavily Hispanic, I guess you could say. Caucasian, there we go. That's the politically correct word. That's the politically correct word.
Yeah, that's the reality I'm going to be living with. I'll be honest, if my grades don't go well, that means I'm staying another semester. Or maybe another year. I don't know. I'm just being real.
I would think it would be another year because you have 2 semesters left, right? Technically.
I'll be here for a year until spring of 2024. But if things go wrong, and you know these are upper class courses, so things will get more difficult as time goes on, I might have to take an extra semester, or I might have to take an extra year. You know, I'm just being honest. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed per se. So yeah, that just.
I mean, if you could manage school and work and still pass your classes, I'm pretty sure if you just have school, you'll do better.
True. But I'll just be honest with you, a bunch of senior theses are popping up here and there that I'm looking at over my classes that professors are like super strict on. And
GGs.
So and senior theses. I'm pretty sure we've seen senior theses from our previous teachers. From our human geography teacher, Miss Sullivan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I forgot how many pages, but it was close to 100 pages.
I think she said it was like 90. I think it was like 90. I think it was.
Oh my lord! And it was filled with text, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't.
But you have all year to work on it.
Yeah, but
True,
still, I
but-
don't know. How do you write 90 pages of something that isn't like a story? You know?
Yeah, and like not with like repeating words and stuff like that. Because at some point, after 20 pages, I feel like I'm gonna be repeating myself over and over just to reach the next page. You know?
Wasn't that what writing is?
Screw it, Dom. Write a 90-page thesis on wrestling. It'll work.
That is a good idea. That is a good idea. But yeah, that's the situation.
Oh man. But yeah, that's definitely gonna be a crazy sort of shift for Dom. It may affect content because that means Gio and I don't have a ride.
Oh shoot, that is true. That means Gio could go, get his license and buy a car.
Very true.
Well,
I don't have to do that because I have in-person classes and I'm not taking the bus.
I forgot how that was something I was gonna mention to you, like off the podcast. Was how is that gonna work? That you're going in person and you're all the way out there in like South Central.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, from South Central to the school is not that bad. Once I go to Lancaster or whatever city out there, and God knows where, it's gonna be a pain, bro. But if it's really bad, I'm just gonna be like, you know what, I'm gonna do online only because it's gonna be so much easier. Because like from here to like to one of the houses is like an hour. To add rush hour, dude, I literally have to go around the national park that we have here.
Oh,
I literally have to go around the national park to reach my house if it's in that spot. It's gonna be hell.
It's not looking good.
Yeah, but dude, the in-person classes for this, it's so dumb. Well, at least to me, it's dumb because it's like from 12 to like 2:15. That's like the class, and then from 2:15 to like 4:30, it's the lab. I don't know what the lab is, but 4 hours of school.
It's a discussion section. Basically, like a small class outside of your main lecture.
Oh man, I don't want to do that.
It's pretty much required.
I think we can all agree discussion sections are the worst part of
They are
it
the
all. It was even worse online because no one would speak.
Oh, dude. What I remember the
breakout
main
rooms
sections we would go in, and no one would talk, and then the professor would come bring us back into like the main Zoom session and expect us to speak out and say, "Oh, what did you guys talk about in your guys' section?" And no one would speak, and it was just so awkward that the professor would try to like make up like, "Oh, maybe you guys didn't have enough time. Maybe you guys need to take a little bit more time." It is what it is.
You literally asked to talk to another person for 2 minutes and you can't even do that. That's weird, bro. But yeah. It's honestly exciting because the classes that I'm going to take are specifically for what I want to do. And, being able to learn more about it just excites me.
What?
Unless it's very bad. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of change going forward. And that's sort of just the whole main idea behind, the three of us and this sort of, I don't want to say necessarily the whole season of the podcast, but like it's probably going to be a reoccurring theme that you're going to see throughout it is just, there's a lot of change going on, and like how Gio said, it's also a lot of change, like personally, like I'm pretty sure you can go back to season 1 of this podcast and to now, and you can see so much changes between Dom and I. You can go back to the start of last season and now and see so many changes that happened with Gio, at least, especially like as podcasters and all that, you can definitely see how we've, changed and really improved in some senses. But yeah, it's just I don't know what's the way I want to put it, but times are changing and we are changing, and that's sort of what this new chapter is going to symbolize. It's a new chapter for all of us, and things are definitely uncertain in a way, you know?
I was gonna say it's kind of nice that we decided to call it anything, because from now on anything can happen.
Yeah.
I like that.
Truly anything can happen. Because, yeah, Gio has all that stuff going on. I've talked about the prospect of my family potentially moving as well, but also just, you know, me going back to school finally and still trying to find myself and hoping to find myself. And then you got Dom.
Oh, my bad.
Dom just being Dom, you know. I think Dom, you're the most consistent throughout this podcast, though. Other than the fact that you're going to be living in a whole new city, you've been pretty consistent, but you've also shown your growth.
It's gonna be interesting.
But anyways, that's pretty much all we have to say for this episode as far as the future of this podcast, our three futures. We hope to remain as consistent, but as you've heard, you know, there's a lot of crazy things happening in three of our lives. But at the same time, with all that change happening, we still felt like we wanted to continue this going, you know. We could have easily ended off with season 3, especially with how things sort of were winding down at the end of that season. But we want to try and continue. We want to try and remain consistent. And only time will tell how this goes, you know. Only time will tell. And the podcast, at least this season, will be sort of a good sort of measurement of it, you know, because the three of us have never been shy to document how things are going in our lives on this podcast. Like, I fully expect after the first week of school, Gio and I to come on here and talk about how much we hate it.
It's gonna be a 7-part rant between Jack and I.
Definitely. But until next time, I've been Jack, joined by
Dominic and Steve.
Giovanni.
Thank you all for joining, and the next time you will see us will likely be next week, where we give our review on Oppenheimer.